Hi, members. We are going to start this podcast. I request to please be silent. So, the first question I want to ask you, ma'am, most people see the final product, the beautiful gifts, the packaging, the customization, but they don't see the person behind it. So, I want to know who is Vanessa Almeida when no one's watching?
Well, when no one's watching, I'm a daughter, mother, friend, everything else because my personal relationships to me are very, very important. I love spending time with my family and my friends. So you'll always find me in cafes, just having one-on-one time with them. Because what happens is when you're running a business and you're trying to scale, you end up not having time for the outside world. So I try to do that for me. It decompresses me. So that's who I am.
Are you more of a cafe person or do you like restaurants more in general?
Cafes.
Cafes.
Hands down cafes, yes.
What matters the most, aesthetics of it, or does your business influences you in that way that you love to admire the ambience of cafes and all that?
So I love aesthetics, but if your product is not solid, it will not get me coming there a second time. So you have to have a solid product.
I see. Okay, so you started your entrepreneurial journey quite quick with My Little Pumpkin,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So what pushed you to start so early?
So I was a new mom. I had my daughter at a very young age. So um, I lived in Vasco at that point, and I realized that in Vasco we didn't have any good maternity and baby product stores. For a good maternity or baby product, we have to go to either Panjim or Margao. And for the port town of the city, it kind of seemed like there was something missing, and that's why I started My Little Pumpkin in Vasco.
I see. But at that stage, were you confident or you were just figuring things out when you were on the way?
I was overconfident, you know. So what happens is once you graduate from college, you have that sense of, oh, I know everything.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, this is all that I've learned. But what happens in real life is whatever you learn from the textbook is just information. All you have to do, putting it into practice, is a much difficult task. So it was a huge learning curve for me.
I truly agree. Like once, until and unless you're not in the field doing the work on your own,
Yeah.
you won't ever
Yeah.
understand
So
how
we
things
made a
work.
lot of mistakes, from My Little Pumpkin. And that's how I learned and applied those mistakes in my
And
business.
how did you feel when you were making mistakes? That I feel when we start a business at the initial stage, a lot of things goes wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of things
Yeah.
doesn't goes as planned.
Yeah.
How do you took it? How do you dealt with it?
Okay, so the initial feeling is you feel like a loser, right? Because you had such high dreams, and then you feel like, oh my God, like I was wrong. And if you just stick with, oh my God, I was wrong, and you don't get up and say, okay, you know what, this has to change. I need to change my outlook, and I need to change what I'm doing. If you don't get up back again, you just stay there. So what happens is you need to be able to get up back again.
Correct. I totally agree. Uh, my next question, what was the transition from My Little Pumpkin to the gift house?
Okay. So this was very important for me. My Little Pumpkin was my first baby as such in terms of business, and it was failing. But I said there has to be some way out. What I used to do, a good thing that I used to do back then is whenever clients came into or customers came into the shop, I would take down their numbers and just message them. WhatsApp had just started back then. Can you imagine not having WhatsApp before that? So social media was not a thing back then other than Facebook. So what I did was I started taking people's numbers down back when nobody was marketing through WhatsApp. And I would send them messages, personal messages, saying, hi, I'm Vanessa from My Little Pumpkin. This is just a message to keep it going. If we have sales promotions, we'll send you a message. We won't bombard you with any kind of sales promos. And I did that for years. And in between, when I started My Little Pumpkin, Silver Stitches,
Okay.
we started going for pop-up bazaars, and we did the same thing. We started getting clients who were just walking by. We'd have conversations, take down numbers, have that same, hi, this is Vanessa from Silver Stitches, and have that conversation going. Then I started creating broadcast groups and then marketing through broadcast groups. So about 5 years back, I had about 10 broadcast groups.
Oh.
And now it's just increased. So that was the only way. But right now, everybody's fed up of getting messages on WhatsApp
Yeah,
from
I
different
agree,
groups.
I
Yeah.
agree. So you were one of the first pioneers of starting WhatsApp marketing.
Yeah.
I would say.
When nobody thought
When
about
nobody
it.
thought
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's actually wonderful. Do you think did it give like good results at that point?
Fantastic. Because people knew my name,
Yeah.
right? They knew they were buying from a person and not just an entity. Tomorrow, if y'all are going to Westside, you'll get a message from Westside, hi, this and that. Y'all don't know who y'all are buying from. You'll just know that Westside as a brand has contacted you. Here, if a person is contacting you, it's a very different feeling. So
I see.
you get to ask questions and different customers get to ask questions actually. That actually makes a difference.
But I think this way that if someone texts through a brand number or brand channel
Yeah.
through WhatsApp, that's different. But if someone personally texts, I would rather not respond to them. Like that would something I'll do.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with that? Did you face something like this?
No, actually, no.
Okay.
Because, see, this is now when it's a broadcast group, yeah, people don't respond. We don't really expect people to respond. But back then, when nobody was using WhatsApp, everybody would respond.
Oh.
So when we send broadcast group messages out, it would take me sometimes 3 to 4 days to respond to that one message that I sent to all my broadcast groups.
And this was for the Silver Spoon, right?
Silver stitches, yes.
Silver Stitches.
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
Okay. And then how did you transform to the gift house?
So a couple of years ago, we were at a stage during COVID, like most businesses, where we didn't know what we needed to do, shut down or grow. And at that time, I had two business partners who I still work with right now till date. And they decided to let me buy the company and rebrand the company to the gift house. And from there onwards, it just went uphill.
Oh, so how did the idea of customizing the gifts come? Because right now, gifting is a very crowded space.
Yeah.
There
yeah.
are toy shops, people are confused what to buy, they buy perfumes and all that.
Yeah.
So, what did you do differently to stand out early on?
So what we did differently from day one was gifts need to be personalized. If I gave a person a gift, for example, if you don't like alcohol for that, for example, and I give you a bottle of alcohol, it's not going to mean anything to you. But if I know you like a brand of coffee, a particular brand that you don't really get here, and I source that for you and I give that to you, that makes a huge difference.
I agree.
Yeah, because it's happened to many people. Clients have called me and said, give me a gift hamper. I ask them what kind of gift hamper. And they tell me that it's for my wife. So then I have to ask questions based on who the end recipient is. So we personalized right from day one when we started making just customized towels.
Oh,
Yes, we had one product when we started off. It was customized towels. So we sold towels with a child's name on it, for example. And that is the selling point, right? I will never throw something that has my name on it.
Yeah.
You will never throw something that has your name on it.
Never, yeah.
Our point was, we want you to keep your gifts, not throw them out, not re-gift them or give them away.
That's a wonderful idea. Can you share any incident or anything that happened which made you realize that personalizing the gifts or personalization in general is your biggest plus point in this business?
Okay, so the thing that happened was two things. One, I've always been the type of person who loves gifts. I love receiving them and I love giving them as well. So all my childhood, we've gotten such rubbish gifts sometimes. I don't know if you all have gotten them, like steel plates. I don't know, what will I do with a steel plate at home, and some certain, those showpieces. I don't think y'all will know, but when we were young, people used to give kids showpieces. What will you do with a showpiece? So we were so fed up of all of those things. And I said, okay, whenever I would gift somebody, I would go to stores and understand, okay, I know this person, my friend likes this in particular. So I would pick those things up for them without them knowing and surprise them for their birthdays. Then a few years ago, I went on a girls' trip to Europe, and in a place called Verona, I entered one very small, it looked like a hole in a wall. Okay, I entered a very small store, and there was this bright and chirpy woman standing there who takes a look at me and she says, "Hi, what's your name?" I said, "My name is Vanessa." So she goes behind a small little machine, takes one card out, and she stitches Vanessa then and there on that card, and she gives it to me. And she's like, "This is for you." And I was surprised. And she said, "You could put your name or any loved one's name on all of these items over here in the store, and we can give it to you, and you can take it home as a memento." And I'm like, wow, this would work so well in Goa. Like for me, I've been abroad for most of my life, okay, and I used to always wonder why aren't these things available in Goa? And my heart is in Goa always. If people tell me you need to come and work abroad, I can't do it. And for me, I'm like, I want to make these things, this good quality stuff available in Goa. So that's how.
That's a wonderful story. Okay. Um, what other products that you said on the gift house right now?
So in the gift house, we have many categories. We do individual hampers for you to give your loved ones. We do bulk gifting. So we work with a lot of event planners to do corporate events as well as weddings, destination weddings that happen in Goa, which is a big market right now in Goa. And so we do hampers, room hampers and gifting hampers for them. And festival gifting as well. So whether it is Easter, Christmas, Ganesh Chaturthi, Diwali or Eid, we are doing all kinds of gifting for these.
Okay, so you do various kinds of giftings
Yeah.
and like various kinds of products. That's when I want to ask this question. Uh, for y'all, if y'all don't know, you've created gifts for the Ambani pre-wedding.
Yes.
I guess that's the biggest pre-wedding or the wedding in the whole world, the whole entire
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
How did that opportunity came about?
So that was I always say it was my lucky streak as such. I just started with the gift house and we were posting about things that we do. And there was a relative of mine, far off relative of mine, who realized that we are doing gifting in Goa. So she was from Bombay and she got me in touch with her boss. They just needed 20 hampers to be done in Goa. Okay, from North Goa to South Goa, we just had to deliver 20 very premium hampers that a wealth management company did in when tie up with MasterChef Australia. Now we did not know this was MasterChef Australia. It was with Gary Megan.
Okay.
So they did an all India event, and for each state they wanted one gifting partner. So we did Goa, like Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi. They all had 200, 300 hampers that needed to be delivered. Goa needed only 20. So I said, okay, yeah, I can do 20, not a problem. And once that was done, we were all still in a group, and we got another message asking, is anybody free to do 8,000 gifts? Yes, 8,000 gifts from so and so date to so and so date. And we said we are available. Funny enough, we were packed before those dates and we were packed after those dates. Those dates we were free. And I did not know what I was signing up for. Nobody told us what event it was. We pitched, we got the deal, and that's when we came to know it was for the Ambani wedding.
So you had no idea before
No.
the event.
No.
And did that help you? Like, did that reduce the pressure you had on you? Because if I would have known I have to make 8,000 gifts in so and so time period for the Ambanis, I would have messed up.
We of course you end up messing up in terms of the pressure when you're there at the event, right? I was ready to go. We had taken 66 people from Goa to Jamnagar to make sure that this event went smoothly, and we did the room gifting. The venue gifting was entirely different person altogether. So we did only the room gifts, and we had to make sure that the 2,000 guests that had come for the wedding got the right gifts at the right time. Because what would happen was sometimes they would switch rooms or they would reallocate the rooms to somebody else depending on who's leaving early, who's coming early.
Yeah.
So those kind of things also. And yeah, it was stressful. We had 14 days altogether, 10 days to prep 8,000 gifts and 4 days to deliver 8,000 gifts.
Damn.
Yeah. Especially people like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Rihanna, Salman Khan, the Bachchan family, like everybody, the who's who of India was here, and some of the who's who of the world also was here.
That's wonderful. Do you have any interesting story to share with us? Because if you're doing something this big for such a great occasion,
Yeah.
I would call it a occasion only. What was one of the stories you would always remember throughout?
Okay.
It can be anything that happened during the period.
So it is the first gifts that we had to deliver was to Rihanna's rooms and Salman Khan. Okay. And the thing that made me laugh the most is because we were not ready for Salman Khan to arrive that then and then. He was one of the first guests to arrive. And my team, I had sent my entire team to sleep because they were exhausted. I was the only one there. And they were like, Salman Khan is coming in 45 minutes. You need to go and put the hampers in his rooms. So I said, okay, I'll go and do it. It's not a big problem for me. So we went to his villa. And just when we were entering, he was entering at the same time. And now the thing is, when there's a VIP guest that's coming in, you are not supposed to be there. You're supposed to be a fly on the wall. Okay, so we entered at the same time. The GM of the property said, y'all cannot be here, run.
Okay.
So we kind of like holding hampers that are huge and we're like running from the side so that he doesn't, I mean, it's a welcome,
Yeah.
right? You can't be there. So we went to the side when we waited near the pool area, his private pool area for the villa. And in 2 minutes, he comes in and he straight comes out that window. And we are standing there with the big baskets like that. And they're like, no, you cannot be here, go again. So we went out and then for 45 minutes outside, we were waiting with those baskets again for him to settle in so that the butler could take it and put it in his rooms. And then the next thing you know, he comes out again right outside with Mr. Anant Ambani. And we're like, oh my God, he cannot run anymore because the next place we'd have to go is into the pool. Like there was no other way for us. So we were just like looking down and I'm like, I'm sorry, that face that I made. And Salman Khan was smiling widely from year to year. And it was just a nice moment. It was very
Okay,
cute.
so you all met.
moment.
Like he
Yeah.
asked, oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's good. Man, Rihanna and Salman Khan, damn, that's crazy. Okay. What was the most expensive mistake you've made in this business and how did you handle it?
The most expensive mistake I made in the business is not having a team as soon as I should have had a team. Like I started off very slow and very small. It was just me in the beginning. I hired one team member and then it took me time to grow, because I used to be like, I don't know if I should hire beforehand because I don't have that kind of orders coming in. That was the most expensive mistake that I've done. Like, because when you have a team, then you can do more, then you can pitch more. That was so most businesses make this one fatal flaw is they think they have to already have the income to be able to support a team. You need a team to be able to support that kind of business that comes in actually.
How important on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think having a team in the initial phase of a business is?
20.
That important?
Yeah. Yes.
But what if...
But you have to be very careful. You cannot overhire beforehand. Yeah. But you need a core team. And you need to start need to understand that the first 6 months, especially in Goa, businesses are slower to start off and kick off. So you have to have that bandwidth to hold on for the first 6 months to a year at least.
Okay. See, most of the time what happens, business owners or young entrepreneurs who are starting their ventures, they often tend to start their business alone or with a friend.
Yeah.
Because they think, I don't need many people. I don't know if it's going to grow or not. I don't know if I'm even capable of, let me just give it a try. And that's one of the reasons they fail. Now, I personally believe you need a team because if you want to grow, you're competing with people who have hundreds of employees working under them.
Yeah.
So you need a team to begin with. And what would you like to say to people who, let's say, just don't want many people at the starting phase, who want to just try out their business and want to see if it's going to work out or not?
So if you're trying out something, there's no harm trying out. But if you realize somewhere along the way that, okay, this is a long-term plan for me, you need a team. When we started trying out, when it was Silver Stitches, we took 3 months first to understand whether is this a good business opportunity or do we need to tweak it and move somewhere else. We learned that it was a good business opportunity, and from then onwards, it had to pick up. So if you have it in the long time, okay, this is working.
Yeah.
Get a team.
Perfect. That's what I support through.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in your life during all your business ventures when you thought that this might not work? And what do you say to yourself if you think that?
Yes, there was a moment. COVID hit everybody pretty badly. For some, their business is boomed. For some, it just crashed. For me, it was more like I don't know where we're going with this because nobody was really gifting during COVID, right? And it took me a good 6 months to understand: do I move forward? Do I just get a job? And for me, I had never had a job. The only job that I ever had was working 9 months in an event management company just out of college. I've always been in business. So for me to make that switch and do I get a job was a struggle. But then when my partners came to me and said that, do you want to take this up by yourself? Because I said I have to quit Silver Stitches.
Yeah.
That was the only time I doubted whether I would continue doing what I was doing. But once I put my head to it, there was no looking back.
That's absolutely amazing. And I think even we all should have a mindset like that. I mean, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will.
No, nobody else will.
So that's the
And
first step.
the hard work that you have to, there's a lot of hard work that you have to put into when you're starting a business from scratch. For example, there was this one time I went to a business and I was ordering tiles for my house. And the owner asked me, so what do you do? And I said, I'm into gifting. She looks at me and she's like, that's also a job now. That people don't understand because it's not really the norm. I have friends with me who have jobs that are outside of being a doctor, engineer, teacher, outside the normal vocational jobs. We've created a path of our own. So when you're creating a path of your own, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have horse blinders on, and you have to know that, listen, even if I fall, I get back up and just go running the same direction.
I agree with that because back in the days there were very limited options if you wanted to if you wanted to join a company, or if you wanted to become a teacher, if you wanted to go through the job part or start a business. But right now everything is a business.
Yes.
Like I can be writing for someone and call myself I run
A content writer.
yeah, a content writer. I run a freelance agency or
Correct.
something like that.
Yes.
So everything is an agency right now. Everything is a business right now.
Yeah.
So this is something which is very good at this point of time. So if you
Yeah.
want to start, this is the perfect time for you to start.
True.
Now coming back to the gift house, custom gifting, it sounds creative. It is very good. It has a lot of emotions, but it is operationally very complex.
Yes.
So how do you manage to scale, making sure that each gift is emotionally different and it is customized?
So scaling becomes very difficult when you're customizing certain hampers. So that is why you need your team, right? It took me a long time to learn the ins and outs of customization, getting my vendors on track, because in Goa, to get vendors, someone will be in Seoli and somebody else will be in, Palole. So you don't really know where you're getting your vendors from. So getting that out of the way, managing how distance works for you, all those kind of things take a lot of time. So when you have a team who will handle the nitty-gritties of it, and you've already established a vendor base, that really helps. But otherwise, in bulk gifting, what happens is we are not looking at the end consumer there only. We are also looking at the client who wants to portray a message. For example, if it's a wedding, a destination wedding in Goa, it's the bridal couple who we're looking at their customization, their likes, what they want to put in the hampers, right? So that is not much of a problem. It's as long as we're dealing with the right person, understanding them is not a problem.
I see. I had one question when you were saying this. I got a question in my head. How do you deal with consistency of the products in this business? Because if you're customizing every single gift, there are a little ups and downs.
You test everything beforehand.
Okay.
You test everything, right from our edibles to our non-edibles. So when we started off with non-edibles.
Okay,
Did
just tell
all
me
of
what
this.
all products do you have in the gift house? Quick.
Ask me what I don't have.
Okay, so there are like, it's a big
It's a
variety of
big
products.
variety because everybody has different likes, right? So we do edibles in terms of gift party favors. We do non-edibles. We do things that we have to source from all over the country also. For example, I have a jute bag manufacturer and a canvas bag manufacturer sitting in Kolkata.
Okay.
Like people from Delhi. So we're not only sourcing from Goa, we're also
Yeah.
sourcing from there. But we also source from Goa. I'm trying to promote something that I seen just a few months ago. The last 1 year, we are doing these, this coconut leaf woven baskets. We're doing the baskets with flowers in them that look very tropical. So for guests who are coming from outside Goa, for them, Goa is like, oh, it's a tropical destination, So we want to promote women in the hilly areas who are actually making these baskets. So they have income as well. Plus, we're promoting our culture.
I see.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so now if you have such variety of products and so many other gifts, so many things that are customly made. Now, if suppose I sell headphones,
Yeah.
now I will calculate the price of the headphones by looking how much it takes me to make it, then marketing budget and all those other expenses, and then my profit margin. That's how I will come up with a price.
Yeah.
How do you price something that is emotional and customized?
So the pricing is basically dependent on what the product is at the end of the day. Now, for Valentine's Day, we had requests from all over the state. Everybody's request was different. So the pricing for everyone is still going to be different. Although we had a catalog and people still chose from the catalog, they wanted to add on. So we did a hamper for a teenage daughter. Like the mother wanted a Valentine's Day hamper for her daughter. So we said, now, okay, you can't just give flowers and we did this cute cake in mugs, which you decorated on the top, writing Happy Valentine's Day and everything. But that is not enough, right? Your teenage daughter obviously has likes of her own. So we were trying to think of what can we do that would interest her.
Yeah.
We added these little phone charms, scrunchies, things that she liked. Although she's a footballer, she liked being girly. So we added those things for her and nail paints and stuff like that, the press-on nails. And that was a different gift. Although it was the same thing from our catalog, we did add-ons. So we calculate prices depending on what we are putting inside.
I see. Okay. So see now, when you are putting so much efforts into making each product memorable to like as you mentioned, you all put in phone charms, scrunchies, and all those things
Yeah.
that will be good for her, even though the mother didn't mention it.
No, she
did.
she did not mention it. She said, I don't know what my daughter likes these days because she likes a lot of things. She's a footballer, but she gets a lot of football-based gifts. I don't want to do football-based gifts. So the trick over here was getting to know her friends. Fortunately enough, my daughter went to the same school, so she asked around. So
Okay.
we try to get information through whatever
Oh.
sources possible. So she asked around and she found from her friends that this is what she likes. I got the information and I did it.
So my question here was, in a market full of cheap alternatives, how do you maintain a premium positioning?
Always, again, test. We make sure that the product that goes out is always going to be a high quality product. That's why I have very close relationships with my vendors. If we have not tasted or tested something, we do not push it out into the market. We do not put it out into our hampers. Why? Is because it's a risk we are taking.
Yeah.
We have built a brand at this point and our brand has to carry on and grow. If you don't test anything that comes into your business, which you're going to sell later on, there is no point in running that business. Because what happens is, I trust not just the product, I trust my vendor. If my vendor is not able to produce, or he's not be able to, he or she slacks on some days and their products are on and off some days, I will not take their products at all. I only work with people who are very, very consistent in what they do, and it's their passion. It's not just a business. They're not just trying to make money. These are passion-driven businesses, and I love working with people who are passion-driven.
That's wonderful, and that's actually a good approach to go around with business.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot have vendors or people you rely on not taking you seriously or not taking the business.
But that happens. It happens a lot. Like in Goa, what happens is when I was starting off, people were like, no, we are used to doing 50, 100, doing 1, 2, 3 for you doesn't work. Or they themselves were not consistent. They have this whole, there's this whole thing, right? Goans are very susegad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some Goans are very susegad. The others are very passion driven, and we really, really want to do a lot in life. So I work with those kind of people. I mean, I have vendors who do amazing stuff and they go home sharp at 6, which is great. That's not a problem. But they don't push. There's no ambition. And it is very sad to see that youngsters nowadays don't have that ambition. And I'm like, where is that gone?
Exactly.
It's just gone. And it's not just me as a business owner who is facing it. All my friends who are in business are saying the same thing. Youngsters nowadays think that, okay, you know what, Goa doesn't pay well, let's just go abroad.
Yeah.
But they don't want to do something over here. And I think there is so much of opportunity in Goa if you're just ambitious enough or passionate enough to do it. But for that to happen, right, for you to get your spark, sometimes you have to work in a place, understand how it is to be done. Because I worked at I worked in all my life for someone else only for 9 months. It was not enough for me to be able to start my own business. I did not get that much info out of the business to start my own. That's why I made a lot of mistakes in my own business. So, what I suggest is when you make a commitment to get your first job,
Yeah.
commit. Commit, learn as much as you can from that business. Don't say no because you're like young. When you're older, you will start saying no because you're like, I can't do this anymore. But when you're like young, just do it. Do it not for the sake of anything else but learning, is what I feel.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for saying such amazing words. This actually was, I definitely am sure that this would have been a very interactive and very great session for everyone who's watching this.
I hope so.
I would like to end this podcast by asking one final question. If you had to rebuild the gift house from scratch today, what would you do differently and what would you double down on?
What would I do differently, like I mentioned earlier, was getting a team and marketing as soon as I could, because sometimes the fear of, can I do this? Can I really do this to that extent? Kind of can hold you back. So knowing what I know now, but then what happened was, I know I built very slowly because I needed to make sure that my product was good, my service was good. So if I have to deliver something from the store to some place, maybe in Diwar or Shandor, I know the challenges that are faced
Yeah.
with that because I've done these things myself. But doing it slowly, I could have done it a little bit faster, probably. You know, scaling up a little faster. That is the only thing that I think I would have changed by now.
Do you believe in speed when it comes to business?
Yes, you have to be quick. Because what happens is with a customer, when you got a client request, there is so much competition in the market with people who are willing to charge lesser than you, that you could lose the customer's interest very, very quickly, right? People are now using AI images to sell, and they don't realize that at the end, customer doesn't realize that this is not what I'm actually going to get. So, but speed does matter. So when you first have a person's interest, a customer's interest, finish quickly with them till you get an okay from them, and then you're done. But if you take your own time and you say, okay, I'll deal with this tomorrow, I'll send them this tomorrow,
Yeah.
you've lost them already.
I see. Okay, ma'am, thank you so much for being on this
You're
podcast.
welcome.
Members, do you all have any questions to ask?